are back with another track for track episode. Um, I'm excited about doing this one because this is regarding my first recorded album since I returned to music. And the name of the album is The Feverish Analysis of the Lascivious Pursuit of Cash Lee. Uh, I started getting into the long titles, and as God was dealing with me on different aspects of intense and increased sexuality as a right, if you will, of liberty and pleasure, but also as a tool of judgment, I started to approach this album from a place of an individual who was really trying to understand what was happening to him. You know what I mean? And I used the Justified Journey of a Nasty Nomad, which was one of my first, it was actually my third instrumental album that I didn't originally know where it was headed. You know what I mean? I put the album out on my birthday, June 25th, 2024, while I was in Colorado Springs. That's where the album was made. And so when I went to approach the Feverish, it was something that I wanted to kind of tie the two together and kind of keep the storyline going, and eventually other projects will come from that. And looking at this character, Agent Cash Lee, or should I say Tarot Blackstone, aka Cash Lee, because I've tied that together as well. So the long title was the result of, just trying to put together the idea of this guy trying to discover himself. You know what I mean? So, I was looking at the word analysis, and I was like, what can I put before it? You know what I mean? Like the intense, the feverish analysis of the lascivious pursuit of Cash Lee, him trying to discover himself and make sense of what was happening to him regarding his sexuality. If you actually listen to the couple of skits that were given in the Justified Journey of a Nasty Nomad, it really talks about him. Again, it's a short clip to open the song. Open the album. And, one guy is saying to the other guy, what are you doing? You can't go out there naked. People will see you. And he's saying, it's all a part of being a nomad and nasty. And really ties into my life. It's the life I've been living, especially on the nomad part. The nasty part is more discovery and projection in the music, but also the mystery, quote unquote, mystery school education and revelation from my biblical studies and spiritual endeavors. So that's where that comes from. The feverish analysis of the lascivious pursuit of Cash Lee. When you get to the return from the nasty journey, which is the skit that opens the album, again, that's how I blend and tie in from the Justified Journey of a Nasty Nomad. So now this is Agent Cash Lee returning from his journey, being naked and so forth, and he's kind of explaining to his superior, his captain, what is taking place. He's reporting, debriefing, etc. And so it opens up, well, look who's back. You know what I mean? If it isn't Agent B Nasty, aka Cash Lee. And so you see all those tied together. And he's asking him, what happened while you were out there naked? And he says, I don't know. He's like really concerned. He's like, I figured out I'm more nastier than I thought. And he talks about some of the things that he did, almost as a male gigolo, while he's on this investigative pursuit to apprehend, this particular woman, you know what I mean, that he's seeking out, not knowing that that pursuit is really a pursuit of himself. You know what I mean? And you start to see that as the album progresses. It's cool because there's two main storylines or movies that I draw off of in a very indirect sense, but it definitely ties in. That kind of has the same essence there, and that's the Marvel Wolverine movie, and that's the movie The Last Dragon, where in each one of those, both of them are going through things that have more to do with self-discovery than it is anything else. You know, in The Last Dragon, he's out looking for the master, quote unquote, only to discover that it's him. And in the Wolverine movie, he's actually out to avenge what happened to his love interest, only to have, adamantium put into him, being tricked into it to bring about, to be used as a weapon that he ultimately takes on for himself and actually uses with the X-Men, as opposed to the villainous character Stryker, you know what I mean, who actually put the adamantium in him. So you see that narrative of a person out to discover or do something, and the plot twist that leads to more self-discovery or self-development and so forth. You know what I mean? So, by the way, I use the Wolverine thing a lot in my just in my biblical studies as God has been dealing with me prophetically. So, Born Under a Shaved Tree Stump was a beat that was made long before I knew there was going to be a Feverish album. So I'm always making beats, and then as projects come together, I'll kind of figure out which beats fit best to put together this, put the project together, what sounds right, create a flow for it, create a theme. If we're gonna put skits in there, then go that. But this beat was actually named Born Under a Shaved Tree Stump. And I didn't originally know that I was gonna keep the title, as I was writing the song. But it seemed, as I was writing the lyrics, because I just started out, she ran over a cat's tail with a teal test, and I just started vibing to it, and then you get so far down, it's like, okay, what do I want to do? Do I want to put a chorus in there? I was like, no, well, let me just sing something out. And I'm already in it with Born Under a Shaved Tree Stump. Let's keep that as the title, and let's sing out a little portion. So that's what you hear him say. All that with a stare and an imagination. It's not a matter of where, the day that we hump. The weight is stabbing us there. Lord, I should have been born under a shaved tree stump. It's funny, it's a tree stump sitting right near me.
All that with a stare and an imagination. It's not a matter of where, the day that we hump. The weight is stabbing us there. Lord, I should have been born under a shaved tree stump.
And it's almost a way of saying I have a feeling purposeless, based on this intense sexuality and desire that I have for this woman. Like the anticipation is driving me nuts. You know what I mean? It's saying I shouldn't even be here. You know what I mean? Born under a shaved tree stump is saying, a stump can be used to sit on. A stump could be used to chop wood on, but imagine being a shaved tree stump. So you just got you know what I mean? So it's just like saying being less than a shaved tree stump is really what it's getting at. I should have been born under that. You can look at born under as actually underneath it, or born as less than a shaved tree stump. You know what I mean? So anyway, it was just a way to kind of, the title itself was just something I came up with while I was making the beat. And I'm always coming up with just weird stuff. It'd be things that ain't even words. I'll just put letters together. Sometimes it'll be a phrase. Sometimes it'll be somebody's name. And, food. Whatever I can come up with on the spot that'll be significantly different from other beats, so I know the difference and so forth. And sometimes I'll put them in a series. then that's what happened. So Born Under a Shade Tree Stump was a beat title, random beat title that later turned into a song. And the gist of the song is really an interaction, a narrative. This guy is narrating the story, sitting outside of a woman's window. Again, this is creepy shit. Just in a general sense, you're like stalker. But he's narrating from outside of her window, and he's telling the story while almost kind of going through it. And he's just talking about an interaction between him and a woman that happened a few blocks from there, and the sexual chemistry was so intense. She knew it, he knew it. She's trying to avoid it. He's bout it, you know what I mean? And so he follows her, and he follows her home, and he can tell what he's feeling from her is obvious to him. But he knows what she's feeling for him because he can see it. She's at home touching herself and vexed, you know what I mean? It was just a cool way to write a story, you know what I mean? She ran over a cat's tail in a teal Tesla, came home, couldn't sit still in her rocking chair, stumbled over her thoughts of me as buck naked, tripped and then got gum stuck in her locks of hair. All in a frenzy. You might be wondering how I got here. Narrating from her bedroom window. It started 6 blocks away at the corner store. I thought her blinking was a sexual innuendo. And apparently I had the same effect as this most sophisticated lady trying to gain respect. It was like she gave me neck and couldn't stop. And as a nasty prophet, I perceived her a swallower, so I followed her. All that with a stare and an imagination. It's not a matter of where the day that we hump. The way to stabbing us there, Lord, I should have been born under a shade tree stump. So I ran with it, you know what I mean? And it just talks about how eventually they come together sexually, you know what I mean? They stopped fighting it and they came together sexually. So Stomp, I really wanted to open the album with an introduction to the whole sexual intensity. So you see how the record's starting off, you know what I mean? The interesting thing is, without it necessarily being a true account of something I've lived in that sense, where a woman is actually riding over a cat's tail and at home in a frenzy, blah blah blah, with me actually recognizing it, I did have that relationship with somebody in a very weird way. A young lady that I used to work with when I was at the city of Baton Rouge, and never ever did anything sexually, but because at different times we were both in relationships, you know what I mean, and we knew, you know what I mean, just with a look and some of the interactions we had. If either one of us pulls the trigger, it's gonna be on and popping. But like I said, oftentimes it was just the wrong time, you know what I mean, based on where we were at, so. Chipped Corners off Becky's Table is also a song where that was the beat title. It might have been slightly different, like Chipping Corners off Becky's Table or something like that, but it was pretty much the same. And again, that was the beat title. And so when I decided that I was gonna do an album, let's just keep the title, you know what I mean? And Becky, you hear me use that in songs. I use Amanda and Becky. Amanda is my way of saying America, and Becky is my way of saying Babylon, which is sometimes in a broader sense, but also in a authoritative, governmental, economic, even the Babylon, you know what I mean? The systems that control Becky, if you will, or that control Becky, but also influence America at large. The systems over the United States of America. So Becky and Amanda. And so that's why that interaction is tantrum thrown as the first pitch to Becky from Amanda, the worst bitch. It's that interaction. And using America's favorite sport, if you will, baseball, to kind of describe that interaction between the two. The financial systems and the country at large and how that's tied together. And it's talking about some of the ills that have gone on in the United States of America, from slavery to, you know, some of the economic oppression from then on, even through civil rights and on up to today, um, and how Americans often try to cover it. You know what I mean? So that's what it gets into. And I was fortunate because uh, Lyric Hill, you know, lent his verse to it. You know what I mean? And it was our first time on one of my records, because obviously it's my first record, uh, really coming together and kicking off, um, you know, something specifically for one of my projects. And so that's the nature of the song. I really want to get in there and discuss America, because while I am, you know, very uh, leisurely, recreational, and rested in my nomad life, um, there's an intensity without it being laborious. There's an intensity of engagement spiritually regarding things that go on in the world, things that go on in this country, and how God has me to spiritually address them. You know what I mean? And so that's the approach that I took. You know what I mean? And I put all that into this record, and you know, didn't really want there to be a chorus, just a nice little breakdown in between the verses, and you know, you know, I think it came out pretty good, and certainly adds, you know, as you build through the record, you see different aspects of what I'm about. So you get the strict, intense, even comedic element in the first song, and then you get, you know, more intense, uh, well, sexuality in the first song, and then more intense judgment in the second song, and then it kind of goes on there. We'll deal with some things prophetically, you know, as it goes through, and then the tie-ins, and so it came out, you know, it's weird because I didn't even, up to this point, I didn't really look at it in that scope. You know what I mean? That it's building with different parts of the story, almost like an anthology that seems different with each song, but ultimately will all tie in when you get to the last song. You know what I mean? No strategy, strict protocol or technique. Punch in My Pancreas. Probably my favorite song on the album. Uh, it's a tie between that and Born Under a Shade Tree Stump, but I'll probably say this one is my favorite. Punch in My Pancreas. Original, it was the original title, slightly different. I think it might have been Punch in the Pancreas. And that was based off a prophetic word somebody had given me about in 2018, and it was like God was going to heal something in my pancreas area. I realized he was talking about spiritually, not necessarily my physical body. But that being said, when I was approaching this record, I loved the beat. Again, the beat was not originally for the album, or wasn't made for that purpose. It was, you know, it was made just on another tip. And then when I decided I was going to include it, the nature of the song was based off a mystery that I was dealing with already, and it was God had specifically spoken to me in regards to where I was at prophetically in my prophetic walk. You know, he was saying, you're not responsible for the results that had been ongoing. And then he was telling me, entertain every notion. And what happens when everything you do, God is going to use? So what happens if you can't miss in what you're doing? And that's hard. You know what I mean? That's a I don't mean difficult. It's a hard concept to embrace. You know what I mean? Because, you know, I was a person who was always afraid to fail or miss the mark or get it wrong, whatever it was. You know what I mean? So the way I made decisions was oftentimes very hard to arrive at. You know what I mean? And it's interesting. First young lady I was married to, one of the things she said to me, because she kind of understood that that's what's going on with me. She said, "Not making a decision is making a decision." The powerful words that I remember to this day, and that was 18 years ago. You know what I mean? And she said that to me. Not making a decision is, in fact, making a decision. And so the concept of this record is what happens when you can't miss. And I actually say that talking. I'm on a prophetic mission, and it's serious, directly measurable in something regarding fulfillment, but what happens when you can't miss. And so I started to really play around. It's really a fun record. It was a fun record to write because I just started to think of like off the wall, bold, damn near ridiculous things, and saying, how would you approach it and milk it if that is in fact true. And so I start off, no strategy, strict protocol or technique. The vet seek is seen waving the scan list. The only means and measurement is mayhem. On the straight play of when the day him, that's God, the ancient of days, the day him of ancient told me I can't miss. So Jupiter, bullseye in the ant piss with a scattered braille satellite, passed my hand through a regular fan twist, cooling off my forehead with a nuclear warhead, and host a foreign affairs summit on a preschool campus. My shot and spice went Steph Curry. I went back to sleep at the height of a let's hurry. And if I'm ever seen assisting the Philistines, I told them, suspect identification photos are best blurry. Wipe my vision. I'm better blinded to arrive at precise vision. Most are scared of the shit that'll land them life in prison and seem pretty sad about accidents and actors if it's a loss. But fuck, if I did it, it was the right decision. Then I'll stop right there. But it was just, when I was writing the record, I was like, okay, let me put myself in a posture of, I don't even want to use the word arrogance because it's really taking on, you can't call God arrogant. So it's taking on the audacity to anything I do, God is going to use for glory and purpose. And I don't mean in a negative sense of just responding and he works all things together for the good. No, it's an all good deal. So that's why I said Jupiter, it's really from Jupiter, but just to get it in there, I said Jupiter, bullseye in the ant piss. And it's the idea of being that far back in the cosmos of the planet Jupiter, that large of a planet, and in a sense, aiming and hitting the target of an ant on Earth pissing. So that type of, so imagine that type of accuracy is what I'm getting at. So from Jupiter, bullseye in the ant piss, with a scattered braille satellite, passed my hand through a regular fan twist. And that's almost, with the regular fan twist, pass your hand through it, is saying no matter how fast it's going, the speed in which I get in and out has got to be because, it would otherwise cut my hand off or really damage it. But the fact that I can't get it wrong, you see what I'm saying? It's just, so it was a cool way of even taking on, if you will, somewhat of superhero, Marvel Comics superhero attributes. And, as I get to if you will, somewhat of a chorus, since I'm never missing the target, my archery is random. What the fuck am I aim for? My attitude is haphazard with a sure guess, because Judas proved a sweet kiss can be a punch in my pancreas. And so that's my way of saying God is giving this to me prophetically. And it's like, why should I even, if God is giving this to me, why should I even care in how I aim? And then, and it plays off of the fact that what Judas did to the Lord Yeshua, you know what I mean? Even being perfect and right in what the Lord Yeshua was doing, right with God, someone that close to him would betray him, you know what I mean? And so I play off God giving me this great gift and me using it in all bold posture because it's like, why shortchange or half do what God has given me? Because over here, me being in the posture God wants me to be in, you're still going to have individuals that are close to you that can and often do betray you, shortchange you, or what have you. So that's the nature of the record. It has been performed in a lot of my show sets. Recently, I started to pull it out just because I'm moving more material into there, and I've only, a lot of times where I'm at right now, my show set is only 30 minutes, and so I don't always include it, but one of my favorite records to recite, and it's probably, from an album standpoint, it's probably the record that said, okay, I got it. You know what I mean? I had a couple other songs that I wrote prior to that, but that was the record that, when after it was written, from a bar standpoint to a, you know what I mean, the way I spit it standpoint, I was like, okay, yeah, I got this. You know what I mean? So, punching my pancreas. The Undress Address was a skit that I wanted to include, and in the background is just a little bit of music playing, using the same sample that came from Punching My Pancreas. And the scene is set to where Cash Lee is like at an arranged apartment or hotel room, while he's on this, on his endeavor to investigate, interrogate, and apprehend these different women while he's looking for these answers. And somebody knocks on the door, and he answers it, and the guys announce themselves as agents who also work for the same organization, which I didn't mention up front. The name of the organization is SHAFT, Strategic Headhunters Against Fraud and Trafficking, which is actually an organization that I started in a sense. It was something that I kind of made up for a specific moment in time back in 2020 that I didn't realize what it was going to amount to later on. Put it in my music and so forth, but it was a way of creating an organization and motivating from there. And so anyway, these two guys approach, and it's his first time really dealing with them, but they let him know we're from the international division. So, and so he's smart about it. He's like, well, how do I know you? Let me see some ID. And it's like, well, how do I know you really work for Shaft? And they give him the code phrase, which is because gods don't do credit. You know what I mean? And you see, it kind of plays off the cash thing. And I was making all this as I was writing it. I just thought it was really cool to because gods don't do credit. So that was the code phrase. And they bring to him some paperwork and a picture and hand it to him, and he's trying to figure out what it is. And he's saying, well, they were saying the captain sent us, and you asked for another address to be able to figure out what this woman is, and so we brought you this picture. And he was like, it's just a picture. How do I know? And they said, well, the captain said you and only you would know what to do with it. So imagine calling in and needing more information about something, and instead of them giving you an address, they hand you a photograph. You already know what the woman looks like, but they hand you a photograph and say, okay, deal with this. You know what I mean? And that sets the scene for the next record. You know what I mean? So it was a cool way to, like I said, it was a cool way to tie things in. It was also a cool way to expand the story, add elements to it, add characters to it, and broaden even the division of this organization that he works for. And so going forward, now I make a lot of music. Going forward, I can tell stories about these two agents, how they got working, why they're in the international division. What you see what I'm saying? It's just like writing I've never been into writing screenplays or anything, movies, but I understand the concept. Knowing how to tie things in, it has to be viable. You know what I mean? Even if it's a fictitious type of story, you gotta have some tie-in that people can, even in a fictitious sense, can go, okay, I buy that. You know what I mean? Why does Wolverine live this long? It's because his body heals so much that even aging is not a thing. Same thing with Captain America. You know what I mean? Like these principles that are in their superpowers or whatever allows for them to live a certain. So having a way to tie it in, even in a fictitious sense. So I was glad to write that skit. Great bridge to the rest of the records and tying everything in. Scuffing Her Muffin. Yes, that was the beat title. And I purposely, most of the album was just based off the beat titles. Okay, and let's see if we can write a record and tie it all in. So I kept it what it is because, again, it's a sexual record. The idea of playing off the skit that's why it's called the undress address. It's a way to address something, but it's also an address. How does he get there? You know what I mean? And so Cash is in this position now to where rather than show up to where the woman is, he's trying to get to the woman he's trying to figure out how to get at her immediately. You get what I'm saying? Because you don't have an address. The address is the photograph. So how do I even get to her? And so it builds on, that's why I said I'll take the Kane approach. And that's Big Daddy Kane. Big Daddy Kane was a ladies' man and so forth, and the way he did it in his music. The interesting thing about that, the reason why I wrote the I'll take the Kane approach, that was on the back end. I wrote this record at a library in the DFW area. I think I might have been in like Grapevine or maybe even in Fort Worth, one of the two. And it was if I'm correct, it was the last record that I wrote. Like, let me get this last record finished to this beat, blah, blah, blah. And so I was writing it, and I'm, using different elements of photography and lighting and so forth. And the way it was coming off, raw, sex, super, and nasty. Lex Luthor, never too much if you ask me. It just had this sway to it. And so the posture and the voice that I was using sounded like Big Daddy Kane. You know what I mean? So I said that's how I would write it. Raw, sex, super, and nasty. Lex Luthor, never too much if you ask me. I'm a bulletin mind frame, trying to stay laser on with the task. We muster up the fortitude, suppress affection, investigate and apprehend. You know what I mean? So, and so I said, and after recording it, I was like, well, let me put that as an opener. You know what I mean? How do I get to this woman, man? I know I'll take the Kane approach. And it was like that. I'm gonna use my swag and I'm gonna get into this photograph and sexually interact with her. So I'm actually going to change, and I talk about it, reduce myself to two-dimensional. You know what I mean? To fit two-dimensional. It's like I'm finna change my dimensions and get into that photograph. You know what I mean? It's a unique way to think about things. And by the way, that was a mystery God was dealing with me with. How many dimensions does God operate in? And what was that like for the Word of God, i.e. the Lord Yeshua, to get here? You know what I mean? And live on the earth and so forth. What is that like? Reducing yourself down to the dimensions of man. And what does that look like for that interaction? So that's what I was playing off of. So like I said, a lot of mysteries that I deal with in the Lord go into these records in different ways, but it's definitely there. And so that's what I played off of. And, when you get to the chorus, it's basically saying the same thing. To lead me to scuff behind her mean muffin. Like I said, I'm doing this specifically to get at this woman sexually, and I'm not pulling back. You know what I mean? I'll tell you this, in writing these records, there was a series of beats that I had made at a particular time, and in using that batch of beats, I specifically said, okay, I'm going to use all of these. I had lined them up. Only a few of them, like one or two of them, got made to kick everything off, and the rest were already there. And I said, okay, I'm gonna keep most of the beat titles, and I'm gonna build all the records around the beat titles and tie it in. And what I like about that is it being my first recorded album, it was a great starting point for things I would do going forward. You know what I mean? In a blend and variety of ways from that from that point on. So, scuffing her mother. Jolting Discrepancy. The cool thing about Jolting Discrepancy is it is the record that made the album, that made me say I'm going to do an album. So the story, real quick, the story behind that is I was at Killer's crib working on recording the Checkmate album, and it just wasn't quite going as I wanted it to go. So recorded a couple of joints, and then I left up out of there. And then I went to coffee shop / restaurant, and I was working on what I call revisits. Revisits are I'll pull up beats that I've done already, retitle it, and start playing with the samples and see if I could pull something else out of it. And I can't even remember what original beat I was working with. Probably something from like Justified Journey. Yeah, that's what it was. A Justified Journey of a Nasty Nomad. One of those songs. And I hit the sample pitch down. And it hit that loop that you hear in Jolting Discrepancy. Don, 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 don. I started to build drums around it. Do, 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 do. That beat is what made me say, shit, I got to do something with this. Okay, let me make some more beats. And we're still at instrumental thought at that moment. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, let me try to build some more instrumentals around it, or put other beats to make a instrumental project. But then I started to think, man, I can write to this. And the beat, I called it Jolting Discrepancy. So, when I started to write the record, it was, I'm going to make a song about different things that I do in the spirit, just from praying in the Holy Ghost. The directive power of God, and things that I'm doing, even that I might not be fully conscious of, some knowledge of, but I wear this many hats. And that's why it started off. Some get it, some don't. Sombrero, fresh fitted, snapback or hard hat. I'm totally committed. I went to a military wartime, modus operandi, green helmet when the others wasn't with it. It's basically saying I wear all these hats, and I'm doing it because nobody else I feel is doing it. This is where God has me, even if people are doing it. And it goes on to talk about, I love how the record builds in what I'm talking about. And I start talking about different aspects of things that's going on spiritually, just from me praying in the Holy Ghost, not only in my daily routine and operation, but even in the midst of my rest. Like I pray going to sleep. A lot of times I pray waking up, you know what I mean, intermittently. I'll do more before 6 a.m. than most do in their lifetime, because that's the power of God. How much of a change agent can I be, and what authoritative power do I have operating in God's power? So whereas I can't necessarily see it physically in the immediate sense, you see it play out and so on and so forth, but the Holy Spirit is making me aware of things that's going on directively with the angels and so forth. So it's in there. Who dares to deal and air 1,000,000 affairs? Because to fill that many pots is impossible to take on. Ain't no Willy way in hell. You know what I mean? So it was just, I had fun recording that one and writing it too, because I was kind of planning it out. Who dares to deal and air 1,000,000 affairs? 'cause to fill that many pots is impossible to take on. I'm gonna tell you what that song did for me, especially as I look at, you know, where I'm at now with making songs. It gave me the Born Under Shade Tree Stump did too, but it gave me these different ways of including singing, breakdowns that I'll do more before 6 a.m. than most do in their lifetime. The whole Feverish album was really a springboard for what I would do going forward. And I had no clue what was coming. I didn't even know that record was coming. I was aiming for the Checkmate, and I just finished putting out my 8th recorded album in 10 months. Still hadn't finished the Checkmate album. So it was a target, but when I hit it. When it finally comes, it comes. And I'm still anticipating doing the record. I'm not trying to not do it. You know what I mean? It really matters to me. But I see where I'm at now and how that first project had different elements in it of creativity that I would later use and improve upon and so forth. So much so now when you listen to my Axe album, you can hear all kinds of things that I did in there relative to the Feverish album. You know what I mean? So, Jolting Discrepancy is the pilot for the Feverish album. Without Jolting Discrepancy, you don't get the Feverish analysis. None of it. You know what I mean? The beats would be there and they probably would appear on something else. But that was the button push. That pitch down sample. Oh shit, I gotta do something. And I pulled the other records in and went from there. So Park Straight in a Crooked Space. Again, that was the beat title. Made before the Feverish was even a concept. It was made probably in the same series of Born Under Shade Tree Stump. And what was cool about it was it didn't take me long to know what I wanted to talk about. And if you follow me on social media, I talk about different aspects of things going on religiously and so forth. And I just had one of those moments, and it was like, shit. I learned to take church thought with a grain of salt. Unflavored behavioral grades I ain't living with. Not because I'm arrogant, just no longer wearing it to the gala of Christians who don't really give a shit. Time bombs a benefit to those that set them in Johns. Lawns are greener to the hoes that wet them, and pimps will weaponize the word of God if you let them. And those who make decisions for the people regret them. Force a square peg into a round hole. I go off on that fucking record. You know what I mean? And it was just, as aggressive as it is, it was more along the lines of me saying I got it from here in God. I figured out this whole thing is about checking everything by the Spirit of God. You know what I mean? Not letting any man have any say-so into your life when you check it with the Spirit of God. But you got to check it with you, because number one, not everybody's going to appreciate, respect, understand, or even tolerate the liberty that you carry. You see what I'm saying? So you got to be a person who, people say, stand on business. You got to be a person who own what it is that you're doing. Not everybody's going to like it. That doesn't mean it's sinful in the eyes of God, but you got to understand there are consequences to everything. Even with the benefits, there's results. You know what I mean? So no matter what it is that you're doing, understand that there are results. And that's what it really means to be a God man, is you respect other people and you recognize that no matter what it is that you're about to do, there are other people in the world, good, bad, ugly, what have you. You have to be able to embrace your liberty and defend your liberty, even if there's repercussions that comes with you operating therein. So that's really what that was about. It's like, and then I kind of mock them in the end, because I'm actually singing from their standpoint. For the wish of being lauded, I'm resisting God, and I'm gonna pitch this fraud with a gotta look at face. Time to fish this frog as a dish to the hogs. And then I say, you know, just know I parked straight in a crooked space. You know what I mean? That's basically saying, no matter what it is, I did what I was supposed to do and am doing what I'm supposed to do. But yeah, park straight in a crooked space was really that. It was just, you know, this is my approach. I like it because I like how it mellows out the intensity of jolting discrepancy. You know what I mean? It starts to mellow out. Before, you know, mellow out the record before it gets more intense in the next track. The big chest move. I said there's always going to be a lot of sexual references in my song. The big chest move is interesting because I wanted to tie in the Feverish album with the Justified Journey of a Nasty Nomad. Okay, we did that at the beginning of the Feverish. Okay, now let's see where we're at now as we move through the different records, getting ready to go out. And so, you know, opening up the Feverish, he's talking with his captain about helping him to analyze what's going on. And so now it's like you know, let's say you show somebody a video. Now it's, what do you think? And that's what he's saying to his captain. What do you think? You know what I mean? I know it's just a piece of it that I've shown you, but what do you think? And the captain lets him know that he passed the test, and that's when he realizes he was somewhat, I hate to say somewhat set up, but it was different than he thought. He was really concerned of, you know, everything that I'm out here doing sexually. I didn't realize that it was gonna go like this. You know what I mean? I know what my job is. My job is to go out here and apprehend and investigate and interrogate these women about, you know, about certain things. And I didn't realize that it was gonna turn into me fucking them. You know what I mean? Like you know what I mean? I was out there selling my ass for cash. You know what I mean? And enjoying it. Like it was. And so it's the mindset of guilty. They, you know, use the term GP, guilty pleasure. It's like I'm enjoying it, but the concern, you know, is this okay? You know what I mean? And his captain is explaining to him, you passed the test. So you knew going out here, even when I tried to stop you from going out here naked, you knew it needed to be done. And so, and you did it. And now I'm letting you know, job well done. It was one of those things to where I needed to test to see if you knew, even when I'm telling you don't, you still needed to know this is what you had to do. And the fact that it turned into a deep sexual thing, you knew that you had to be naked. You didn't necessarily know that it was gonna turn into, you know, this overly promiscuous, sexual, hypersexual endeavor where you're virtually a gigolo. You see what I'm saying? But you knew it needed to be done, and you were able to still get the business handled. It wasn't like it got in the way of business. You see what I'm saying? You got done what you needed to get done. And he was telling me, you know, you knew when and how to fuck, not give a fuck, and still keep focus on the task at hand. You know what I mean? You showed wisdom and that none of the others had. And he talked about that's why he hired him, and so it's just cool. It's just me writing it. You know what I mean? Let's write the story. And he tells him why. You know what I mean? Why you had to be tested this way, because this checkmate is coming. And the checkmate ain't no joke. You know what I mean? And there's a partner who's going with you, and when you go out there, I won't be able to help you out there. You see what I'm saying? I'm sending somebody as your help, But there'll be no communication with you and I in that sense. You're on your, not to say on your own, because you'll have her. You know what I mean? And when she sees you, it goes from there. And so he's basically telling them the Checkmate project is coming up, and we need you to be sharp. You need to have my mind going out there. You know what I mean? And so, and now you can see why he tried to stop him, because it's a test. So you got to be in that, you got to know when it's time to act, react, how, who to, you know what I mean? Am I fucking this one? Am I interrogating this one? Both, blah, blah, blah. So, and he talks about the young lady who's going to be assisting him. You know what I mean? She's come back. She's been not reassigned. She's been rehired. She came back. She reboarded in order to assist you specifically for this checkmate endeavor, attempt, and so forth. And she's also sharp. And so, and then it concludes with, and when she sees you, show her your hands. So there's a, you know what I mean? So you try to figure out what that mystery is. What is it about his hands? Is it a marking on them? Is it the way just the hands look in general? His fingernails? It could be a bunch of different things, but when she sees you, show her your hands. And then it jumps to the next song. Cramping hands applauding. I'm trying to remember when I made that beat. I don't know if it was made after the other beats, you know what I mean? Honestly, I don't remember. I don't know if it was made in like an original set and I came and added it later, or if I had it already. But I am going to tell you this, so that, I am going to tell you this. I did have a cramping hands experience when I was in Colorado Springs. A noticeable one. So whenever I would do any intense labor, my hands would cramp so badly. You know what I mean? That it was virtually unbearable. You know what I mean? So I would venture to say I made the beat off of the experience of my cramping hands. There are some things that happen with me prophetically, but I'm not sure if that was one of them. You know what I mean? Where I had the beat and then eventually my hands started cramping. I think it was the other way around. But that being said, it was my way of kind of taking what I had learned up to that point about how God would use sex, sexuality, and different things in the end times, and tying it into not just what goes on with the Antichrist in Israel and so forth, but also here in America. And it's interesting because I mentioned a library early on. Tiptoe in your library and so forth. That was based off something my mom told me in where she lives. They were building or remodeling a library in her area. And I was familiar with the old version, and it was like, okay. And so it just made me think, okay, I'm going to head to that library one day. But I used the library as a way to talk about America. You know what I mean? Because most cities, most counties, even the smaller ones, governmentally, this is heavy shit, Lord. Governmentally, almost every city or every county has a library. You know what I mean? You can almost count on it. You can't go very far in America without there being a library. Good, bad, whatever. And so from the ground up, brick by brick, make a wish on a fish eye against my dick. If the gist by which you built your edifice was that meticulous, from the inch start was borderline ridiculous. No tiptoe in the aisles amidst your library, the blaring lifts with the dead silence that I carry. Your method's like stabbing a whore to feed his shame. My breath is a badge of authority. Need a name, I am. The no guns, no bullets, surprise when asking. The shogun, fuck a puller, surprise assassin. The got that glow to rock that flow sound. Fully given the God nod to knock that dough down. Bully, the yes man of Yeshua about the mission. who treats this bully in service like a devout position. So when they ask your stupid ass who has you nervous, refer to me as the Black Dawn of demolition. And it goes in there. It just reminded me that was a record I was supposed to be working on called the Black Dawn of demolition. But by the way, that last bit of it was actually written at D1. You know what I mean? At least in that posture against D1. So it was like, you know, that's what the Pulitzer Prize thing is. You got these people who are out here fucking over the work of the Lord for notoriety. You know what I mean? And the people thinking them they're such a great person or whatever. And I was making it known I'm a different type of assassin. You know what I mean? The no guns, no bullets, surprise assassin. The show no bullet surprise when asking. The Shogun, fuck a Pulitzer Prize assassin. Got that. I love how I wrote that record too. Great way to go out. Very heavy in judgment, intense, but still bar heavy. And then as you get into verse 2 and verse 3, it really talks about mysteries of the end times and how the Antichrist will literally be set up. There's mysteries in there that it was like shit. When it started to really hit me what God was putting on my heart, how this thing was gonna go down or is gonna go down. And that's how I addressed it, you know what I mean? Kneel at your Armstrong, kneel at my arm strong, flex at the eaves apple and swallow. The tree trunk, you know what I mean? So that concludes, if you will, the songs lyrically, you know what I mean? And then Destination Checkmate is the beat that's playing up underneath the undress address. And so I just use it as a go out, fill the project out a little bit more, let people enjoy it because it's playing in the background in the so to bring it more up front so people can hear it. And so that's what it is. The Feverish Analysis of the Lascivious Pursuit of Cash Lee is my first recorded album. And that's me actually MC and rapping, etc. I have other albums instrumentally that came before it, but that was the first recorded album. And it got released with another project called The Prophet and the Prophecy. And so I put them out at the same time. I recorded all the material at the same time. And because I had the rest of these other records done, I was like, well, let me put this Prophet and Prophecy project out. And it's like a teaser for other albums coming. The Congress album has already had a joint on there, and that's already come out. There's stuff from A Jazzy, A Wet Dream, and some stuff that literally was just specifically for that project. And it's the Feverish is also my first attempt at mastering. Shout out to Lyric Kill. He was already getting people to do his records and mix and master. And when we talked about it, now I've got this material recorded. I want to get a good master on it. And so me and him discussed it, and I was like, well, let me see if Adobe Creative Suite has something. You know what I mean? Adobe, what do they call it now? Because I'm already paying for it for the other graphics programs and different things like that. So let me see. And they had it in there. So all I did was download it. You know what I mean? And it's one of the few bills that I actually have on my Nomad life every month. I go on to the David album, and the David album sounds much different. You know what I mean? Go on to the Congress album, much more clear. The mastering on the Congress album is top tier. Then I come back with the Art album. You know what I mean? And I come back with the Acts album, and then just the God-filled prophecy, and then ultimately 45. God-filled prophecy 45, and then the Acts album. And the mastering on the Acts album, I did some things in there I had never done before, and it gave it a more crisper sound. So anyway, so proud of the Feverish Analysis of the Lascivious Pursuit of Cash Lee. So many things have spearheaded, have branched out, directly and indirectly tied to it. It sets a foundation for what I'm about as the Nasty Prophet. So a lot of what you hear, I'm calling it characters, but it's my way of prophetically putting out what I'm actually about. I'm high intense with sexuality, where it's going in my life. I know that's where God is leading things, whether people fucking believe me or not. You know what I mean? I keep trying to tell people, I'm just going to throw this mystery in here. I keep trying to tell people, you can't say shit to me in regards to God and sexuality when the covenantal sign between him and his people was shaving the excess flesh from the dick. So don't tell me that God isn't leading that somewhere. You get what I'm saying? Say whatever you want. That is the covenantal sign, circumcision. You get what I'm saying? I don't know what you do with that. But anyway, yeah. So it's largely what I'm about, and it continues to grow and expand as God gives me more mysteries, revelations, miracles, signs, wonders, etc. And I include them in records, and it's developed from there. And the Feverish was the foundation, if you will, lyrically. The Justified Journey of a Nasty Nomad was the foundation from a instrumental standpoint. You know what I mean? And so those two together makes for a great music career. God willing, you'll see some other stuff from Cash Lee, because me and Killer got a project called To Rock Blackstone, and we're trying to tie him in because it's going to be a duality of a record. But I realized To Rock Blackstone can actually be Cash Lee. Cash Lee be his middle name. You know what I mean? Tarot Cassius Lee Blackstone. So he's got two middle names: Tarot Cassius Lee Blackstone, and they gave him the name Cash Lee. So and I just came up with that recently. That'd be a great way to tie those two together so that I don't make them two separate characters. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's just the artistry mixed with my prophetic life. I'm grateful for what God has done in my music, and in my music, through my music, for my music, to my music, and the associated team that I have with me, in helping me to select samples and create great music and time my projects right, even when they're coming pretty fast. And you know what I mean? The full-blown artistry, that artistic mode that I'm in right now. www.NastyOnTheBeats.com will take you to virtually everything that I'm doing, including my YouTube channel, my Bandcamp, where all my music is currently housed, and I'm eventually working on merch. It's interesting. I literally just got a T-shirt I ordered months ago that was coming from overseas, and it just took forever to get here. But my mom just told me she got it at her apartment, so I'll be rocking that pretty soon, and we're gonna keep it moving. This particular track for track is done late because I've done it already. This is funny. I recorded a track for this already, but I didn't like how it came out. I was in Houston in Pearland, and I was out where there was a water fountain, and you can hear the constant water fountain in the background, and it didn't make for a good expression, video wise. So I said I want to do it again. I'm back out here in Austin, Texas. This is actually where I shot the track for the David album, and right up there at the basketball court is where I shot the Who I Am, and what's the other song that was in there? I've never been fraud, a switch to an odd pitch to retrieve Lord. Anyway, that music video was shot right in this park. So just out here vibing for a week. We're at the beginning of almost mid-August. I believe today is the 10th, August 10th. At the time this is being recorded, I'm out here in Austin enjoying myself, and about to hit an open mic. Thank you, Lord, because I would have forgot about that. About to hit an open mic tonight, and that's what it is. Be Nasty, aka Nasty on the Beats.